If you're of a certain age, you absolutely remember the pain of opening a new toy on your birthday only to see those three awful words, batteries not included. Our entire world seemed to run on AA batteries. And for a little while, Duracell came out with what felt like the perfect gadget to manage them all. Yup, the Duracell PowerCheck. If you were buying batteries back in the late 90s or early 2000s, you saw these everywhere. And the idea? Oh, it was just pure genius. A battery that could tell you exactly how much juice it had left, with no other tools needed. I mean, the concept itself was just so simple, so smart. We all have that one junk drawer, right? The one full of random batteries, and you have no idea which ones are good and which are duds. With this, you could just press two little dots and know right away if it was fresh, halfway gone, or totally dead. And that really gets us to the two big questions here. The tech behind this was shockingly clever, using the same kind of science you'd find in a mood ring. But if it was so great, why can't you buy one today? All right, let's get into it. Okay, so before we can understand how the tester worked, we need a quick refresher on how a normal alkaline battery even works, or more importantly, how it dies. And it all comes down to one thing: voltage. So, a brand new AA battery, right out of the pack, is humming along at about 1.5, maybe 1.6 volts. As you use it in your remote or your Walkman, that voltage just steadily drops. Once it gets down to around 1.2 volts, it's about halfway done. And when it's barely pushing out 1 volt, it's pretty much toast. So theoretically, all you got to do is measure the voltage. But Duracell didn't go and stick a tiny little voltmeter in every single battery. No, they did something way, way more creative. They basically built the entire tester right into the battery's label, using heat. The whole process was just press dots to test. And if you remember these, you had to press hard. When you squeezed those dots, you were actually pushing tiny contacts against the positive and negative ends of the battery. That completed a tiny circuit, which powered a tiny little heater. And that heat, well, that's where the magic happened. That little indicator bar was coated with something called a thermochromic material. It's a fancy name, but it's simple. Thermochromic. Heat, color. It's a material that changes color when it gets hot or cold. You've seen this stuff everywhere, in mood rings, in those stick-on thermometers for fish tanks. When the little heater underneath warmed up, the strip turned yellow. Simple enough, right? But this is where it gets really, really clever. And what's so wild is how all of this was put together. The contact dots, the heater, that color-changing strip, even an insulating layer that acted as the on-off switch, the whole shebang was just printed onto the battery's thin plastic label. It was just an incredibly cool, elegant piece of microengineering. See, a basic heater would just be on or off. It would tell you if the battery was good or bad. But the PowerCheck gave you that beautiful gradient, from full all the way down to empty. The real secret wasn't in the color-changing stuff. It was in the shape of the heating element itself. And that's the key right there. The heater wasn't just a straight line. It was tapered. It was wide at one end and got really narrow at the other. Now in electronics, a skinny wire has higher resistance than a fat wire. So by changing the shape, they made it so different parts of the strip were harder to heat up. This one simple design trick is the secret to the whole thing. So let's picture it. You take a brand new high-voltage battery. It has so much power that it can easily push current through the whole strip, even the wide, low-resistance part. The whole thing heats up and the entire bar turns yellow. But if you have a weak, low-voltage battery, it only has enough oomph to heat up the easy part, that skinny, high-resistance tip. So only a little bit of the bar changes color. It's brilliant. But wait, there was another layer of genius here, something kind of hidden. Because you were using the battery's own power to run the little heater, you were testing it under a load. And that, my friends, is a way more accurate test than just measuring its voltage while it's sitting there doing nothing. Think about it like this. You could take an old, dying battery, and a multimeter might say it has 1.3 volts. You think, hey, that's still pretty good. But the second you try to make it do some real work, like powering the PowerCheck's heater, that voltage just collapses. It plummets, revealing the battery is actually useless. The PowerCheck gave you the real story. Okay, so we have a brilliant, super accurate, self-contained battery tester. It solved a problem we all had. So what happened? Where did it go? Well, the answer has less to do with the technology and more to do with us, the users. It was really a perfect storm of reasons. First, it added cost to a product where every penny counts.
Second, a lot of people found it was actually pretty hard to press the dots hard enough to get a reading. Plus, over time, more of our gadgets started having their own battery meters built right in, making the feature kind of unnecessary. And, there was the biggest reason of all.
The engineers behind this worked on a simple assumption that we all have a drawer of half-used batteries we need to sort through. But the reality of how people behave, we tend to just use batteries in a device until it stops working. Then we toss them and put in a fresh pair. We never actually needed to test them. And that right there is the ultimate lesson of the Duracell PowerCheck. It's this incredible case study in product design. The engineering was absolutely flawless, but the problem it solved was, for most people, not really a problem at all. At the end of the day, the PowerCheck was just an amazing feat of engineering, a complex, clever solution printed on a simple label. But it was the perfect answer to a question that, it turns out, most of us just weren't asking. And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? The story of the PowerCheck is a perfect reminder that when you're creating something new, being technically brilliant is only half the fight. You also have to make sure you're solving the right problem. Which makes you wonder, is the cleverest solution always the right one?